Hey everybody, Average Joe here, back with another quality video. Today we got some grade A edutainment for you. We got this T56 manual transmission. Now this is out of the 98 Camaro, so we don't need this extra clearance that we're going to be giving it today, but it kind of solves a few problems for the car at the same time. So today we're going to delete the CAGS, the computer aided gear selection, which is also referred to as skip shift, more commonly referred to as skip shift. So what that does is, under normal operation, low engine speeds, when you go to shift out of first gear, it'll kind of guide you into fourth gear, so that skips second and third, keeping your RPMs low for emissions and fuel mileage and all that fun stuff. But on a race car, you don't need it, you don't want it, just get rid of it. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to get that done, and then we're also going to remove the electronic reverse lockout, and we're going to put in a mechanical reverse lockout. So what that does is, if anything happens to the solenoid here, it'll quit working, so it's nearly impossible to go into reverse. You still can, but it's much more difficult, and you run the risk of damaging stuff inside the transmission when you try to force it into reverse like that. So we're going to replace that with a mechanical reverse lockout. And then we also have a new tailshaft seal, and we're going to take the bleeder off and put in a remote bleeder. So I'll show you what all that is. But first we're going to start with the CAGS and the reverse lockout, and we'll go from there. So here we go. So for the skip shift delete, all it really does is take this out, and then you just put a plug in. So it just plugs the hole the lockout was in, and then just to seal up the transmission again. And you can see the little piston here. So when that's electrified, it would shove a piston out, and then that would kind of guide you into fourth gear. And they make pigtails that they tell the car that it's still working, but it essentially just kind of deletes the operation of it, so you can leave it in here, and then your car doesn't throw a code or anything. But if you're doing like a retrofit, like let's say you're putting this into a different car, like a old hot rod or something that's got a tighter tunnel that doesn't have the clearance for this big knobby thing sticking out the side of it, then you can get one of these deletes that just removes it and plugs the hole. They make several different styles. This one I got from ICT, just because I liked the way it looked as opposed to some of the other ones. So that's sealed up. Now we'll take off the reverse lockout. So on this, there's an electric solenoid here that allows the plunger to operate. And if you remember, we did the video on replacing the spring on here. Hey guys, we're back. So today we're gonna start working on some transmission modifications. First one is this RDE Research Design Engineering reverse lockout replacement. So with this, it takes out the electric lockout and gives you a tension lockout. So it's got a spring-loaded detent on it. So that's gonna allow you to go into reverse safely. So you go to reverse and then you have to push through that spring-loaded detent before you can actually get to reverse. And they've got a heavier spring in here, and it comes with an included softer spring. And they recommend, if you have a short shifter, to use the softer spring. So we're going to go ahead and take this apart and put the softer spring in, and that's going to use spring clips or spring C-clip pliers, and that's under tension right now. So I'm going to want something to put that in. Here we go, this will work. So we'll use this can't twist clamp to put tension on that guy while we take it apart. That will work. So then just get in there. Actually, probably making this way more complicated than it needs to be. And I'm chewing up the face there, but there it goes. That works, yeah. So that's a lot softer that way. And then it comes with an O-ring. And a bolt. So now we have the reverse lockout replacement. So what that does is it replaces the solenoid with just a mechanical spring. So instead of relying on that solenoid to allow you into reverse gear, you just have that electric or that mechanical spring there. And what's nice about that is other lockout kits, it's just a plug or a plate without the spring-loaded plunger, and that could potentially allow you to go into reverse at the wrong time. So it would be a bad day. You know, kind of imagine what would happen doing 80 mile an hour, jamming in reverse. Probably not going to have a fun time. So we'll just clean this up here. And then that just goes in. That O-ring would cooperate. O-ring was just a hair tight. So it came with an Allen head, but in the spirit of keeping all the hardware similar, I'm just going to use the old bolt that it came with. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on it too. So go get some Loctite, and we'll snap this down. And we're just going to use some blue Loctite. Okay. So all that's left back here is the tail shaft seal. Put that in there. Next, let's work on this. So what this is going to do, this is the remote bleeder. Taylor Ray's got a pretty good video on how it works. But this takes place of the bleeder valve here, and then this gives you an extra length with a speed bleeder on it, which allows you to basically bleed the clutch by yourself. So you can take this, run it back up into like the clutch master cylinder, and you can crack it open, and then you stick it in the master cylinder, and then you can just sit there and pump the clutch until bubbles go away. So what it does is it gives you a closed loop system. So as you pump the clutch, it forces the air out and then sucks the fluid back in, instead of, you know, like if you just left this open to air, pump it out, and then it would have the opportunity to suck air back in. So it just makes bleeding the clutch a lot easier. Now I feel like the quick connect here is also going to make clutch changes and bleeding easier too, if, you know, it ever comes down to that. But this just cheap insurance, you know, make my life a little easier. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll go ahead and get this put on, and then we'll be ready for the bell housing. So yeah, super easy. So one thing we can do when we go to do the install, we'll have that on, and then we can kind of drape that over the motor so it's nice and out of the way. But yeah, pretty quick and easy. So now let's go ahead and get the bell housing back on this guy. Actually, I take that back. What we're gonna do is, since I got new bell housing bolts from the bell housing to the motor, so we're gonna use the old bell housing bolts and the old transmission to bell housing bolts, get them cleaned up. But since we had some mismatching bolts and some missing bolts from the transmission to the bell housing, we'll go ahead and just clean them all up, and then we'll use a little bit of both so that we have matching bolts all the way around the transmission. And then the bell housing to the motor will have the new ARP bolts, so everything will be nice and cohesive. So we'll go ahead and get these cleaned up, and then we'll come back to this. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and pull the old tail shaft seal off, and then put our new one in. This one's probably fine, but we've got the transmission out. Now is the perfect time to do it, so let's just get it over with. So we got our seal puller. Just get that guy in here, maybe. Okay, so this one's a little bit harder to get than I thought. actually that spring popped out pretty easily. Might have been because I used that seal puller. I don't know, maybe I cut it. But we'll get this cleaned up real nice, and then we'll throw that new one in. Alright, now we're ready to put the bell housing on. One thing I did before now was I took my file and I just smoothed out both surfaces. So I didn't really take off a lot. I just wanted to get rid of the high spots and the dings and dents just from the years and years of being taken out, removed, and thrown around by someone who didn't really care that much about it, I guess. But anyway, I wanted everything to mate up nicely, so I just smoothed it down, got it nice and flat. Like I said, I didn't take off a ton of material, just trying to get the high spots knocked off. So go ahead and throw this guy on here. Gotta line it up with the dowels first, I guess. Specs for this guy. Downside to the Haynes 4th Gen Camaro book, the manual transmission consists of 2 pages. Kind of a bummer, a little bit of a letdown. Alright, so we've got backup light switch, reverse lockout, skip shift solenoid, transmission to bell housing bolts. For the 6-speed, it is 26 foot-pounds on a 98. Now, the 6-speed up to 99, the transmission to bell housing bolts are rated for 26 foot-pounds, and then 2000 and later are rated for 37 foot-pounds. So they must have had some kind of bell housing change in 2000 that allowed them to torque down a little bit more. So for this one, we want to make sure 26 foot-pounds. That way we don't strip out any threads like what happened before that I had to fix. So alright, so we got our torque wrench set to 26 foot-pounds. There it is, see, so it's not super tight. There we go. Voila! Transmission's ready to rock and roll. And if you want to see, this thing actually has a pretty good look to it. I'm really liking. So that's it, guys. That's our transmission overhaul for the day. Hopefully the rotating assembly will come in the next couple days and we can start getting the motor back together and then be ready to rock and roll. But thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time. Bye.